Smile.
Hi, this is Ed Beckley, and welcome to Enlightenment Email number 1. So, this time we're going to be talking about enlightenment with respect to our own programming. We take ourselves to be these independent, free beings. You know, it says that we can do what we want in the world, how we want to do it, and it appears that way. However, who is it that has free will? Who is it that has choice? And do we really have choice? The famous philosopher Descartes says, "I think, therefore I am." The way I look at it is more, I am, therefore I think. I am. There's an essence. Why is that? Because our minds and our egos have been programmed. That's right, folks. I hate to tell you, but our minds have been hypnotized into thinking it was a separate me. It ain't so. What do I mean by that? The mind takes itself as the ego to be a separate entity, and that's only an appearance. Why do I say that? Even science verifies it. If you take all of creation and you reduce it to the quantum field of physics, we recognize that we're all one. We're all this pure energy. But it appears that our senses have hypnotized us into believing that we're these separate entities. Well, that's fundamentally in science, and I could talk all day about that, believing it. But until you begin to directly experience it, you won't understand. So let's take it a little bit further here. In essence, our mind is programmed. How is it programmed? From the very time we're born. First of all, we inherit genetic traits. We're programmed by well-meaning parents, teachers, relatives, friends, our culture, the values that we grow up with. And imagine ourselves being almost this bit of clay, being shaped, molded, and sculpted into this person that we are. Now, that's with respect to our thinking even, our thoughts. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, first of all, studies have indicated that 90% of the thoughts that we had yesterday we're going to have today. It's predictable. These same thoughts are running over and over and over. As I said, we become a programmed entity. And yet, we really think that we have free will? Not on the level of mind. And we have to recognize that. How do we recognize that? We call it recognize it. By stepping back and being the observer of the mind, the witness of the mind. Have you ever been able to do that? To step back and watch your mind just continue to obsess about an issue. It might be an old boyfriend or girlfriend. It might be about somebody not treating you right at work. It could be a lot of different issues, but the mind will go over it and it'll continue to feed it. It feeds it just like every time we throw a piece of log on a fire. It feeds that fire, that conflagration. It continues to inflame it, and we get more, and we get what we call self-righteous. Oh, well, I was done wrong, and I. And I gotta tell you, that sense of I, that sense of separateness, that sense of you and me is defined by the ego mind. And the myth of just the separate ego mind can be seen when we step back. That step back is the witness. Now, that's conceptually the way it works. However, what it takes in order to cultivate a witness, and what do I mean by the witness? I mean by beginning to enliven, begin to engender that level of life, that level of pure consciousness that permeates all of life, pure awareness, that beautiful observer of life. Because the nature of pure awareness, the essence of who and what all of us are, is just that pure observer. It doesn't judge, it doesn't have an intellect as such, but we'll get into that a little bit later. It just sees, it just observes. And so some of the beginning stages of beginning to transform your consciousness from where you are, the normal state of consciousness where you take yourself just to be a mind body, and you begin to ascend, and you begin to recognize, you begin opening up a new dimension of life, that dimension of life, that fourth dimension of life, pure consciousness. As we open up that dimension of life, we can begin to observe that the mind is purely a programming. It purely restates, regurgitates the same thoughts over and over and over. These same thoughts are watered by envy, judgment, jealousy, and all the human emotions. Keep that mind surging round and round. However, when we're able to cultivate the witness through deep meditation, deep reflection, the witness begins seeing those values of jealousy and anger and fear, which are endemic of the mind, and they begin watching them. And as we see them from the light of pure consciousness, those human, so-called human mind values begin to unravel. We begin seeing them for what they are. It's like the jig is up, folks. It's not true. And that which is not true becomes extinguished in the light of consciousness. So that's what our journey will be. How to step back, cultivate the witness. And with that witness, we begin seeing the mind as it is, just simply a playback unit. That's all it is. And when we're able to rest, begin to establish ourselves deeply in that pure awareness, that's the first step of liberation. Who are we liberating from? We're liberated from the mind, taking ourself to be the illusory mind. We're liberated from that. And that's the beginning of freedom and the first step of enlightenment.